Hey guys, it's Tyken here. I'm back with another video for you, so let's dive right in. Oh, and don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment. Let me know which manhwa you want to see next. Let's go!
It was just another ordinary day in the metropolis. The sun was shining, the traffic was in its usual chaotic rhythm, and nothing seemed out of place. In the middle of the crowd, a young man named Sooho waited for the light to change, completely focused on his cell phone and oblivious to everything around him. He was so focused on the screen that he didn't even notice what was happening around him. The light turned green for pedestrians. His friends called him to hang out, but Sooho turned down the invitation. He said he couldn't make it that day and would see them tomorrow. With the conversation over, he started crossing the street with the other people, still looking at his cell phone. Completely distracted, Sooho ended up bumping into a man walking in the opposite direction. The man was not at all kind and yelled at the young man to watch where he was going. Sooho tried to apologize, visibly embarrassed by the situation. That encounter only made what was already a bad day worse. Sooho moved on, dwelling on the anger and frustration of the moment. The irritation was still plastered on his face. But then, something strange broke the city's routine. A sound, a tremor, something that made everyone stop. A deafening noise caught everyone's attention. Sooho, like the rest of the crowd, turned to see what was happening. Panic began to spread. Whispers and looks of astonishment took over the crowd, who were now looking up, not understanding the scene. And out of nowhere, absolute chaos. A gigantic explosion erupted in the middle of the avenue, throwing cars through the air as if they were toys. Despair took over, and people ran to save their lives. But that was just the beginning. The real terror was yet to come, and the terror came from the skies. A solitary lightning bolt struck one of the tallest buildings, as if it were a predefined target. The entire structure was pulverized in an instant, collapsing on the city and spreading a rain of debris. Down below, there was total panic. People ran aimlessly, trying to escape the destruction that was falling on them. But there was nowhere to run. The attack was not an isolated event. The sky filled with luminous projectiles ready for the next impact. A second wave of destruction swept through the city, much larger and more devastating than the first. It was the apocalypse. The force of the explosion threw everything into the air, turning cars into mere toys. No one was safe. The destruction was indiscriminate and swallowed everything in its path. Amidst the chaos, Sooho was just trying to survive, running with the terrified crowd. The fear was paralyzing, but his instincts kept him moving, running away from the epicenter of the destruction. That's when he heard a scream. A woman was running desperately, begging for help amidst the rubble. Without thinking twice, Sooho tried to reach her, reaching out to help her escape the danger zone. But the chaos was relentless. An out-of-control ambulance appeared out of nowhere, and Sooho could only watch, paralyzed with horror. Powerlessness and despair took over him. For a second, he almost gave up. But then, a new determination arose in his eyes. He saw another out-of-control vehicle, a truck coming at high speed, about to cause another tragedy. And in an act of pure desperation or courage, Sooho threw himself in front of the truck, determined to stop it with his bare hands. The impact was brutal. Sooho's consciousness shattered in an instant, and all that was left was an overwhelming pain that swallowed him whole. Suddenly, the darkness was cut by a flash. A strange memory of a completely different place began to take over his mind. He opened his eyes, but he was no longer on the city's asphalt. Sooho found himself in the middle of an unknown forest, not understanding how he had gotten there. The initial shock gave way to immediate tension. Something was very wrong, and he felt it in the air. He looked around, trying to process the situation. Where was he? And more importantly, how? That's when he looked at the sky and saw something that defied all logic. There weren't one, but two moons in the sky. This place was definitely not Earth. Panic took over and Sooho started running aimlessly, fleeing from a danger that he couldn't even see yet, but already felt. Until the source of his fear revealed itself, a gigantic bear with a fury that did not belong to this world appeared in his path. Faced with that creature, the young man was completely paralyzed by terror, but the bear wasn't after him. The creature was in the middle of a bloody battle against a pack of equally strange beasts. Back in reality, a calm voice narrated the events. A doctor explained that Sooho woke up on a planet with 2 moons, in a forest full of bizarre beasts. Sooho listened to everything in silence, reliving every moment of that nightmare. The weight of that experience was visible on his face. The doctor continued his assessment, noting the details of Sooho's unbelievable story. Clearly, there was much more to be said about how he survived. As the doctor spoke, Sooho's mind went back to the forest, to the exact moment when he witnessed the brutal confrontation between the creatures of that strange world. The battle was savage. The beasts attacked the bear mercilessly, a scene of pure carnage that was etched in his memory. But the bear was not an easy prey. With a single blow, the giant creature retaliated, showing its enormous strength against the aggressors. However, the pack was relentless and numerous. They advanced as a group, a wave of hungry predators that did not back down. They surrounded him on all sides. Even with all its strength, the bear was being subdued by the number of enemies. Hidden, Sooho watched everything, petrified. He was just a helpless spectator in the middle of that monster confrontation. It was then that, amidst the chaos, something caught his attention. A white cub moved away from the fight, passing near his hiding place. The small animal seemed harmless, almost lost. Its eyes did not carry the same savagery as the rest of the pack until their eyes met. In that instant, Sooho's heart froze. He had been discovered. Without thinking twice, he took off. He ran like never before, with the pure instinct of survival guiding his steps. Desperation was his only fuel. There was no time to look back. The only thing that mattered was putting as much distance as possible between him and those creatures. The air burned in his lungs, and every muscle in his body screamed with exhaustion, until he stopped, panting, and heard a strange sound. For a moment, Sooho wondered if the fatigue was making him hear things. The sound he heard was not his imagination. Something nearby stepped hard, breaking a stone on the ground and revealing his presence. Before Sooho could react, an invisible force ripped him off the ground and threw him violently backwards. He fell back into the vegetation, completely immobilized by the vines that trapped him on impact. He was so exhausted that he could barely control his own body. His strength completely abandoned him. He couldn't move. Sooho was trying to understand what had happened. The noise, the fall. He wondered if the fatigue was finally making him hallucinate. His body was at its absolute limit, responding only with spasms of fatigue and confusion. It was then that, amidst the delirium, he noticed something in front of him. A field full of red and vibrant fruits. They looked juicy and perfect. For someone hungry and exhausted, it was like a mirage in the desert. Hunger spoke louder than prudence. The only question in his mind was whether it was edible. As he approached, he saw ants devouring one of the fruits. If the insects could eat it, maybe he could too. It was a risk he needed to take. The decision was made. Survival depended on it. Without hesitating, Sooho threw himself on the fruits and began to eat desperately, ignoring everything else. He took a bite, but stopped suddenly. Something was different. It wasn't the taste he expected. The silence of the forest around him seemed to gain a different weight, as if something was watching. Sooho froze. The feeling of being watched became a real sound coming from the tall vegetation in front of him. He was definitely not alone. A noise confirmed his suspicions. Something big was moving in the woods, and then he saw it. Fear took over Sooho in the same instant, paralyzing him completely. Hidden in the vegetation, a predator watched him, still and calculating. The creature was gigantic. The shock was so great that his body reacted by instinct, frozen by terror. Suddenly, the creature burst out of the woods in a swift attack. But, to Sooho's surprise, he wasn't the target. He could only watch, completely shocked, as the scene unfolded. The giant serpent was hunting another monster, a creature he hadn't even realized was there. A savage battle began right in front of him. Sooho was just a helpless spectator amidst the fury of nature in that world. He finally realized the complete madness of that place. Or perhaps after so long, he was the one going crazy. The adrenaline wore off, and the weight of an entire year lost in that world crashed down on him. Sooho simply passed out. Time turned, and a heavy rain began to fall on the forest. Raindrops gathered on the leaves of the trees, forming a stream of clean, fresh water that trickled down slowly. Even unconscious, Sooho's survival instinct took over, and he opened his mouth to drink the falling water. He had survived, or, to be more precise, perhaps he had adapted. His body, acting on instinct, absorbed the rainwater, fighting to stay alive even in unconsciousness. Gradually, consciousness began to return. The torpor that dominated him finally gave way to a slow, heavy awakening. But he wasn't alone. The sound of hurried paws caught his attention, revealing a small pack passing by. Fully awake, Sooho watched the animals cautiously. In that place, any encounter could be the last. The rain passed, and a new day began. With his body recovered by the water, Sooho's priority was now different: finding something to eat. The hunger was unbearable. Night fell once again, and the sky with its 2 moons served as a constant reminder that he was far from home. That's when he found it. Amidst the bizarre vegetation of that world, there was a food source that seemed safe, a chance to quell his hunger. With what little strength he had left, he clung to the fruit, and he tore it from the plant with pure determination. That food was his only hope of staying on his feet. Mission accomplished. He took the giant fruit to a safe place, ready to finally satisfy the hunger that consumed him. Without hesitation, Sooho devoured the food with a voracity he barely remembered having. Each bite was a step further away from death, and it was at that moment that his constant companion appeared, a small wolf pup that followed him everywhere, no matter where he went. Sooho had become so accustomed to the little one's presence that he missed him when he wasn't around. A strange friendship in that hostile world, but tranquility in that place was always fleeting. While he was eating, Sooho didn't notice the new threat watching him from above, preparing to attack. Suddenly, Sooho's peaceful meal was interrupted. A strange noise made him look up, and the initial confusion soon gave way to alertness. There was no time to think. The survival instinct took over, and Sooho prepared for whatever was coming his way. The threat revealed itself, a colossal gorilla that came down with overwhelming force, destroying everything around it. Faced with that creature, Sooho was insignificant. The monster raised its fists, ready to end everything with a single devastating blow. The impact was brutal, shattering the tree trunk, but the target was no longer there. Sooho managed to escape by a hair, using the forest vines, and, in the middle of the escape, he didn't forget to take his snack with him. From a safe distance, Sooho taunted the creature, basically wishing it better luck next time. His confidence was growing. The plan was simple, but brilliant. Use his own food as bait. He threw the giant fruit, and the predator fell right into the trap. But Sooho wasn't the only one there. His little companion, the white pup, appeared out of nowhere, running towards the danger to help. Despite its size, There was no fear in the pup's eyes, just pure instinctive courage to protect its friend. But courage wasn't enough against brute force. With a single movement, the gorilla intercepted the small animal in the air. The pup was brutally thrown away. The blow that followed was devastating, crushing the spot where the pup had been a second before. The creature looked at the ground, confused. The small being he had just attacked had simply disappeared. He didn't disappear. He had managed to escape the crushing blow, but he didn't come out unscathed. The attempt to help came at a high price. Even after being thrown, the white cub didn't back down. He stood before the monster, ready to continue the fight, completely ignoring the size difference. The gorilla's fury, which had been divided before, now had a single target: the small creature that dared to defy him. Without hesitation, the monster raised his gigantic fist, preparing a blow that would crush the cub once and for all. The impact was brutal, throwing the small body away as if it were nothing. But while the gorilla was focused on the cub, Sooho finally made his move. He launched himself from the treetops in a surprise attack. The protagonist aimed for the only vulnerable spot he could reach. With a precise strike, he plunged his makeshift spear directly into the creature's eye. The weapon pierced deep, blinding the gorilla in an instant of pure agony. However, even with the searing pain, the monster's reflexes were faster. Before Sooho could retreat, he was caught by the beast's gigantic hand. With tremendous force, the gorilla hurled him against the ground. The impact threw him away, causing him to collide violently against a tree. Fallen and without strength, Sooho could barely support himself to try to get up. His whole body protested against the movement. Sooho's attack only served to make the creature even more furious. Wounded and blind in one eye, the gorilla prepared to finish him off. But even bloodied and on the verge of defeat, Sooho gave a slight smile. He admitted to himself that this had been a completely stupid thing to do. From some distant place, the doctor who was watching him seemed shocked at what he saw. Sooho's recklessness was something he couldn't understand. The scene changed, and the doctor's voice echoed in Sooho's mind, questioning why he had done something so dangerous. A question that went unanswered. The doctor watched from afar, completely perplexed by Sooho's attitude. For him, it was a senseless sacrifice, a decision that would lead to an inevitable end. But Sooho, even defeated and about to be crushed, maintained a confident smile. He had made a life-or-death bet and was about to find out the result. As the gorilla prepared for the final blow, Sooho recalled his reasoning. He was counting on the wolves understanding that his intention was only to save the cub. Suddenly, a scream of pure agony echoed through the forest. But it didn't come from Sooho. A white wolf lunged at the giant creature. That little cub that Sooho saved was none other than the son of the Wolf King, the leader of the Crimson Wolves pack. Sooho just watched the scene. His risky plan, his desperate bet, had worked. Help had finally arrived, and it wasn't just one wolf. The entire pack emerged from the shadows, attacking the gorilla with overwhelming fury, tearing the beast's flesh in a frenzy of revenge. Seeing that he was safe, Sooho finally allowed himself to relax. He lost consciousness while watching the massacre of the creature that almost took his life. At that moment, a bond was forged, an unlikely alliance, sealed with blood and sacrifice. All this because moments before, he refused to stand still while the monster prepared to crush the small, injured cub. That act of courage summoned a force of nature. Led by their king, the entire pack rushed to return the favor. Time passed under the glow of that strange, broken moon. The days turned into years, and Sooho was no longer alone. He ran with the pack, hunted with the pack, and lived with the pack. Sooho understood that they had accepted him. He was no longer a human lost in that forest. He was now part of the wolf family. In the 31st year lost in that forest, Sooho was no longer a stranger. He had been accepted by the pack, and their survival was now his own survival. He ran side by side with his new brothers, hunting and fighting like one of them, adapting his body and instincts to this wild world. The young man protected the youngest and ensured that no one was left behind. The pack was his family, and he would do anything for them. Over time, Sooho became a fundamental piece, leading attacks and defending the territory with a ferocity he learned from the wolves. Under the glow of the two moons, the howl of the pack echoed through the night. It was a call for unity, a warning to enemies, and a celebration of their collective strength. And Sooho howled along. He had forgotten what it was like to be human and completely embraced his new identity. The forest was his home. The years turned into decades. In the year 120, Sooho no longer even remembered civilization. His life was a constant struggle for territory and the survival of the pack. He moved with an agility that no normal human would have, climbing cliffs and hunting prey that defied the imagination. And the predators of this world were on a completely different scale, but Sooho no longer felt fear, only the hunting instinct. He just needed a chance, a single moment for the perfect attack, and he never wasted an opportunity. The strike was precise, sinking into the giant snake's head and ending the threat with brutality. But the fight never ended. No sooner was one threat neutralized than another emerged. The pack now faced a colossal boar, a prey as dangerous as any predator. Sooho dove into the battle without hesitation. In this life, he had gained many friends, but also lost several. Each hunt was a life or death risk for everyone. He had already lost count of how many years had passed. Were there hundreds? How was he still alive? Over time, he became not just a member of the pack, he became their king. Sooho's life as king of the pack was a never-ending war. Each day was a new battle, a new hunt to secure the territory and the survival of his adopted family. The law of the jungle was simple and brutal. Either you were the hunter or you were the hunted, and Sooho made sure his pack was always at the top of the food chain. But even surrounded by his family, loneliness consumed him. After 120 years of isolation, he was sure he was the last human on that strange and wild planet. He wasn't completely alone, though. He had his pack, a family that accepted him and followed him, a bond forged in blood and countless battles side by side. Even so, the weight of a lifetime of struggles was overwhelming. Each victory was just a brief respite before the next conflict, an endless cycle of violence. Back in the present, the doctor listening to his story asked the question that mattered. After so long, how did he finally get back to Earth? Sooho's answer began with the account of a conflict that changed everything. A declared war against the gorilla race for the dominion of a sacred territory. He led his Crimson Wolves pack into battle. They ran like a river of fangs and claws, ready to fight for their king. On the other side, the gorilla army advanced with equal fury, a force of nature willing to crush anyone who invaded their domain. Sooho didn't hesitate and placed himself on the front lines. The clash between the two hordes was cataclysmic. The entire hill shook with the impact of the battle, a brutal confrontation for supremacy. Amidst the chaos, Sooho moved with a clear purpose. He was no longer just a human trying to survive. He was a king leading his people to victory. With a powerful leap, he advanced towards his true target. The protagonist aimed directly at the gorilla leader. In a war like this, taking down the king was the only way to ensure a quick end to the conflict. The fate of the battle, and perhaps of his future, would be decided in that single, audacious attack. Everything depended on that blow. Sooho unleashed all his accumulated fury in that single moment. The wild instinct he had cultivated for years exploded in a single attack. His war cry echoed through the hill, a sound that promised the definitive end for his enemy. The blow was accurate and overwhelming. The Gorilla King didn't stand a chance and was completely annihilated by Sooho's power. Far away, in a ruined city, an exploration team advanced cautiously through the rubble. They continued on their way, seemingly on just another routine patrol through that desolate territory, until one of the team members, a blonde woman, stopped suddenly. Something on her equipment caught her attention. The device in her hand beeped uncontrollably, showing a dimensional energy reading completely off the scale. She immediately alerted her captain to the danger. The situation was much more serious than it seemed. The team leader didn't hesitate and ordered the coordinates to be sent to the portal management team immediately. The exact location of the anomaly was sent, but time was running out. Suddenly, a column of energy exploded right in front of them. A portal was opening. The captain yelled for everyone to fall back, realizing that his bad feeling from the night before was coming true. But it was too late. A violent shockwave exploded from the portal, throwing the entire team away as if they were nothing. Fallen on the ground and completely defenseless, panic took over the group. Faced with the unknown power that was emerging, their training meant nothing. The only instinct left was the pure fear of death. But amidst the chaos, a blonde swordswoman was not intimidated. She drew her blade, ready to face whatever had come out of the portal. With a furious cry, she made it clear that no matter what it was, she would completely destroy it. Meanwhile, the surviving soldiers were in total panic. One of them desperately called for reinforcements, knowing they wouldn't stand a chance alone. And then, from the portal, an overwhelming aura of power exploded, announcing the arrival of a new threat. Despite the crushing pressure, the swordswoman did not back down. She faced the danger head-on, determined to fight to the end. However, what came out of the portal wasn't what she expected. A dark silhouette began to materialize, emanating a sinister energy. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The figure solidified, revealing the form of a man. His eyes glowed with an intense light, signaling a power of another level. Shock took over her. That monstrous presence, that destructive energy. It was coming from a human being. For the first time, her confidence wavered. Her hands trembled, and the determination she had seconds ago began to turn into fear. The man unleashed a primal roar, an explosion of pure fury and power that echoed throughout the area. The wave of power that accompanied the scream completely paralyzed her. It was a pressure she had never felt before in her life. Still, she mustered all her courage and advanced. With her sword in hand, the swordswoman ran to face the source of that impossible power. But the man only responded with more fury. His power exploded, ready to crush anyone who dared to challenge him. She stopped, terrified. The strength he emanated was unlike anything she had ever faced, surpassing even the most dangerous monsters in the dungeons. The pressure was so intense that her hands trembled on the sword. She recognized that aura. It was a force that even the highest-level dungeon monsters couldn't emit. But suddenly, all that overwhelming pressure simply disappeared. The man, who seemed like a force of nature, simply collapsed, losing all his energy at once. Seeing the opening, the swordswoman didn't hesitate. She used his body as support to advance, taking advantage of the moment of weakness to get closer. The confrontation ended before it even began. The man fell backward, completely unconscious, leaving behind only a trail of destruction and a confused opponent. Soon after, government agents arrived at the scene, shocked by what they found. They didn't understand what had happened there. The agents rushed to assess the situation, finding the swordswoman standing in the rubble, with the mysterious man fallen at her feet. The man who had unleashed so much power now seemed completely harmless, passed out on the ground. The swordswoman looked at him, still processing what had just happened. The whole situation was too bizarre. Soon, the news spread. The situation was resolved. They identified the man as a returnee and urgently requested an ambulance. Sometime later, Sooho woke up in a hospital room. He was finally back in civilization, safe and under medical care. A doctor entered the room to talk to him, wanting to understand everything that had happened. Sooho then began to tell his story. It was the first time he had spoken to a human being in 1,000 years, and he had a lot to say. The doctor listened attentively. The story was so detailed and vivid that it seemed taken from a book, a warrior who returned after a 1,000-year adventure. It was a fascinating case. After the long conversation, the doctor thanked Sooho for sharing his valuable experience and left the room. He informed him that the testimony and exams would be sent to the Awakened Bureau and that Sooho should be discharged in a few days. Meanwhile, Sooho's report arrived at the Bureau, and the doctor in charge of the case analyzed the data with some distrust. At the Awakened Bureau headquarters, the discussion about the new returnee had already begun. An agent, the same one who found Sooho, questioned her superior about the veracity of the information. For her, something just didn't fit. The captain, however, tried to give a logical explanation. He suggested that the guy might have had absurd luck to be able to return. But the agent wasn't convinced. She looked at the young man's ID, and the information there was unbelievable. The superior continued, theorizing that perhaps Sooho found a return stone by pure chance, something that happens very rarely. The source of her disbelief was there, on the card. Park Sooho, officially classified as an F-rank awakened. The lowest level there is. The swordswoman couldn't reconcile the image of an F-rank with the overwhelming pressure she felt in that alley. It was simply impossible. Seeing her confusion, the captain decided to show her the complete report he had received from the hospital. He offered the tablet, saying that perhaps the doctor's diagnosis could clarify things a bit. She began to read the report, and one line in particular caught her attention. The patient, according to the doctor, sometimes acted like a wolf. The description evoked a mental image of the pure savagery that hid behind that calm face, a completely untamed beast. Shocked by what she read, the agent realized that this case was much more complex than she imagined. She then made a decision. She asked the captain to personally deliver Sooho's returnee documents. The agent needed to confirm with her own eyes. She had to find out who or what Park Sooho really was. The captain was surprised by the agent's request. Personally delivering a returnee's documents wasn't standard procedure, but he eventually agreed, albeit a little hesitant. Choi Soo-young left the room, determined. She needed to see with her own eyes what kind of person or creature Park Sooho was, especially after reading that bizarre medical report. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the object of her curiosity was about to wake up. 2 weeks had passed since Sooho returned to Earth. After 1,000 years in another world, he finally achieved what he wanted most, but now everything seemed strange and unfamiliar. He wondered how he should live from now on, lost in thoughts about his uncertain future. At that moment, a nurse entered the room, bringing lunch and breaking the silence of his thoughts. Sooho just watched the food being placed beside him. It was a simple hospital meal, but for someone who spent a millennium fighting to survive, it seemed like a feast of the gods. His stomach rumbled loudly, reminding him of his most basic needs. Sooho decided that, before thinking about anything else, the first order of the day was to fill his belly. But at the exact moment he was about to start eating, someone appeared at the door. It was Choi Soo-young. She called him by name, introducing herself as an agent from the Awakened Bureau. Only Sooho didn't respond. He was too busy devouring the food in a way that barely seemed human. The agent was stunned. She expected to find a predator, a threat, but what she saw was just a hungry young man eating like he'd never seen food in his life. And then, she realized, he wasn't just eating. Tears streamed down his face, a silent reflection of the 1,000 years of suffering he was finally starting to leave behind. For Sooho, that handful of rice was proof that he had finally returned home. Each grain was a reminder of everything he had lost and somehow regained. The woman introduced herself as Choi Soo-young, an agent of the Awakened Bureau. She expected a reaction, but Sooho kept his head down, completely immersed in his own emotions. Slowly, he began to compose himself. It was only then that Sooho really noticed her presence. He stared up at her, still trying to process the situation he was in. The agent felt a chill. His gaze wasn't that of a simple patient. There was something more there, an intensity she couldn't decipher. For an instant, the image of the hungry young man disappeared. In its place, she felt the presence of an absolute predator, an overwhelming aura that left her paralyzed. And the next second, all that tension broke. The supposed predator was simply licking the tray clean down to the last crumb. Absolutely nothing was left. He cleaned the tray as if it were the most important meal of his life. After satisfying his hunger, the conversation finally began. But Sooho surprised her, questioning why she was using such informal language with him. The question wasn't a joke. Despite his youthful appearance, he carried himself with an authority that didn't match the situation. Soo-young was confused. To her, he was just a rescued patient. His attitude was, to say the least, strange and arrogant. Ignoring his behavior, the agent continued with the protocol. She placed some documents in front of Sooho, explaining that she needed his signature. They were consent forms to share his information with the Bureau, a standard procedure for all awakened and returnees. Sooho picked up the pen, but not to sign. He looked at the object with genuine curiosity, as if he hadn't seen one in 1,000 years. And then, to the agent's complete confusion, he started sniffing the pen. She couldn't take it anymore and asked why he had this strange habit of smelling everything. In response, Sooho explained with complete naturalness that it had been 1,000 years since he last used a pen. An answer that left the agent completely speechless. Soo-young sighed, incredulous. His story was too absurd. She began to think that the boy was just mocking her or trying to be difficult. The agent's patience was running out. This returnee wasn't cooperating, and his answers only made her more confused and annoyed with the situation. But Sooho seemed totally oblivious to her frustration. He continued to draw on the paper, completely focused, as if he were recalling something very distant. With quick and precise strokes, he began to put on paper the memories of that other world, a glimpse of the brutal place where he spent the last millennium. Soo-young then tried another approach, asking if he learned anything useful in that place, like magic or martial arts. Sooho, still focused, asked her to be more specific. He denied it, saying he didn't learn any of that. The only thing he did was live in a jungle, where the only goal was to survive each day. The agent then put the pieces together. If he lived in a jungle, all he did for the last 10 years was run to survive. To her, his story was starting to make sense. A pretty disappointing sense. That's when Sooho corrected her. It wasn't 10 years. He was in that jungle for 1,000 years. 1,000 years fighting prehistoric predators and wild beasts, where every moment was a brutal battle for his own life. A never-ending hell where only the strongest could see the sunrise of the next day. That was his reality for an entire millennium. But the agent didn't believe him, of course. She insisted that the official record said only 10 years. Her conviction perplexed Sooho. How could it be 10 years? Soo-young was losing her patience completely. She stated with certainty that he was wrong and that she had irrefutable proof of it. Sooho couldn't understand. For him, the 1,000-year experience was an undeniable reality, etched into every fiber of his being and every scar on his body. Tired of the argument, she pointed to his official record. There, on paper, it was written that he had been missing for exactly 10 years, not a day more. Sooho was shocked to read the document. The words on the paper said one thing, but his memories of 1,000 years of survival screamed something completely different. To prove her point, the agent handed him his new identity, an official card from the Awakened Bureau with the name Park Sooho. He held the card, but it didn't seem real. It was like looking at the identity of a stranger, someone he no longer knew. With her part of the job seemingly done, the agent turned to leave, leaving Sooho behind with his confused thoughts. Before leaving, she instructed him to return to his family as soon as he recovered. For her, the case was closed, the door closed. Sooho was left alone, abandoned with a reality that wasn't his. Her words echoed in his head. Family. The only family he knew had been left behind, in another world, and then a painful memory surfaced. The image of his real family, the one he lost when he was transported. He remembered the savage world he called home, a place where each sunset was a victory, one more day of survival. He remembered his forest family, the beings he lived with for 1,000 years. Upon returning to Earth, he had to accept the harsh truth that he had lost them forever. With the memory of the loss still fresh, he turned back to the report in his hands, searching for any clue about his past on Earth. And that's where he found the answer. The record of his parents, Park Jung-ho and Kim Jung-suk, both listed as deceased during the dungeon break of 2015. The news hit him like a punch. He had not only lost his forest family, but his original family was also dead. His whole world collapsed in a single instant. The pain of the double loss turned into a cold determination. No more waiting, no more talking. At that moment, Sooho decided that he himself would discover the truth about everything, no matter the cost. Driven by his decision, Sooho ran through the hospital hallways in search of answers, ignoring the calls of the nurses who tried to stop him. He didn't waste a second. Without knocking or asking permission, the young man burst into the doctor's office he was looking for. Sooho confronted him directly, but the man sitting at the desk seemed only slightly surprised by the interruption. With a disconcerting calm, the doctor asked if there was a problem, as if he didn't see the urgency in the situation. His tranquility caught Sooho by surprise. He expected resistance, but not that air of indifference. Sooho approached the desk, desperately explaining that he needed help. He begged them to let him out, stating that his younger brother was still alive and that he needed to find him at all costs. The doctor, however, dismissed him with a standard response. He said that they would investigate and that Sooho should simply wait for his brother to arrive. The suggestion to just wait left Sooho frustrated and powerless. That wasn't a solution. The doctor maintained a serene smile, treating the young man's anguish as a mere inconvenience, but Sooho made a discreet sign with his fingers, a subtle gesture that went unnoticed. Suddenly, the doctor's mask fell. The friendly smile vanished, revealing a hard and calculating look. Sooho noticed the change instantly. That man in front of him was much more than just a simple doctor. Meanwhile, elsewhere, someone who helped Sooho reflected on the situation, remembering having paid his bills and clothes. Upon entering the taxi, Sooho said goodbye to the doctor and his assistant, promising that they would keep in touch. The doctor just watched the car drive away, with an expression difficult to decipher. As the taxi disappeared down the street, the conversation between the two who remained began. The woman couldn't understand why he had helped that young man so much. She reminded him that he paid the hospital bills, bought clothes, and even the taxi for Sooho. The doctor just smiled, saying he had a simple reason for it all. He confessed that he just wanted to keep hearing the boy's story, no matter how ridiculous it seemed. His assistant was shocked by the answer, unable to understand his real interest. Back in the office, the doctor changed the subject, asking her to take care of the broken doorknob. He remembered the exact moment it was damaged. The doorknob simply fell apart at Sooho's touch. It was the second time something like that had happened. Far away, the young man continued on his way, unaware of the impression he had left. Alone in his office, the doctor could finally organize his thoughts about what he witnessed. He concluded that it had been a long time since he felt the presence of an irregular so closely. Meanwhile, the city's traffic continued as normal, but this calm was about to be broken by an urgent news report. Inside the taxi, the driver continued his route while listening to the day's news, completely unaware of the nature of the passenger he was carrying. On the dashboard screen, a report recalled the Great Disaster, the catastrophic event that, 10 years earlier, changed the world forever. On that day, nightmarish creatures appeared everywhere, bringing an era of chaos and destruction to humanity. The military forces fought with everything they had, but their conventional weapons could barely scratch the monsters. Battles were fought in every city, but humanity was losing badly. It was the beginning of the end. It became clear that the world needed a new kind of soldier to have any chance of surviving. And so the Awakened appeared. People with powers who not only hunted monsters, but also became celebrities in televised fighting championships. The driver, a big fan, was excited about the tournament's advertisement. Sooho, however, seemed completely lost, as if he was seeing it for the first time. Excited, the taxi driver began to talk about the big fight that was about to happen, a confrontation between two world-ranking heroes. But for Sooho, it all sounded like a distant reality. The world had changed so much that he barely recognized it. The story the driver told was the one everyone knew. 10 years ago, portals opened, connecting Earth to other dimensions. With military defenses collapsing, a new class of warriors had to rise, the mercenaries. These new heroes formed guilds, turning monster hunting into a lucrative profession and a pillar of the new society. The driver even confessed that if he were an Awakened, he would quit his job right away to venture out hunting monsters and get rich. It was then that he noticed the confused expression of his passenger. Incredulous, the driver asked if Sooho really didn't know any of that. The driver, still perplexed, demanded an answer from Sooho. He couldn't understand how someone could be so oblivious to the reality of the world. He recalled the beginning of it all. Portals to another world opened simultaneously, not only in Korea, but all over the planet. And from these portals, nightmarish creatures emerged, bringing chaos and destruction to cities that were not prepared for what was to come. The first day of the invasion was a massacre. Humanity lost 10% of its population in a matter of hours. The world's military forces tried to fight back with everything they had, but it was a completely uneven fight. Conventional weaponry barely scratched the stronger creatures. The old world order was collapsing. It was in this scenario that the Awakened emerged. People with special abilities who turned monster hunting into a highly lucrative profession. Sooho listened to everything in silence, absorbing the story of a world that, to him, seemed like fiction. The driver explained that it wasn't easy to become a mercenary. You had to first awaken and then pass a rigorous exam. The conversation continued as the taxi approached the final destination of the ride, but something in those words sparked a new determination in Sooho's eyes. An idea was beginning to form. The sun was already setting when they finally arrived in a residential neighborhood further from the center. The car went up a quiet street, a peaceful setting that contrasted with the story of war and monsters they had just discussed. And then, the taxi stopped. The driver pointed to a 2-story house, confirming that this was the address Sooho had given him. The trip had come to an end. With a final thank you, Sooho said goodbye to the driver, who wished him luck with his younger brother before leaving. Sooho stood in front of the house, now alone. A crow flew by, breaking the silence of the street and bringing a bad feeling. He then walked towards the entrance of the house. Inside, a lady was cleaning the window when she noticed someone approaching. She stopped, intrigued. Suddenly, the lady accosted him directly from the window, asking who he was. The question caught Sooho completely off guard. He froze for a moment. The confusion was clear on his face. How could she not know who he was? A heavy silence formed. Sooho continued to stare at her, waiting for some sign of recognition that didn't come. The confusion on Sooho's face gave way to a cold seriousness. He realized that the situation was more complicated than he imagined. The woman clicked her tongue in disapproval. Her patience was gone, and she looked at him like he was a nuisance. But the young man was not intimidated. There was a determination in his gaze. He wouldn't leave without answers. And then, she exploded in fury. The lady yelled at him to get lost, accusing him of being another one of the debt collectors who were tormenting them. The window was slammed shut in his face. Sooho stood there, processing the violent reaction he had just received. He turned his face away, his mind racing. This wasn't the reception he expected. What the hell had happened to his family? The light turned on in the room, indicating that the sudden light paralyzed him for a moment. He couldn't process what he was seeing right in front of him. After the shocking encounter at his own house, Sooho walked away with nowhere to go, his head full of questions. He looked back one last time, trying to process the hostility of that lady and what could have happened to his family. As he passed the mailbox, he noticed that it was overflowing with mail that hadn't been collected in a long time. Driven by a premonition, he decided to pick up the letters to see if he could find a clue. He began to leaf through the envelopes one by one until one of them, with a warning in red, caught his attention. It was a debt collection notice with an immediate payment stamp. The lady's accusation that he was a debt collector suddenly made terrible sense. With the letter in his hands, the weight of reality crashed down on him. Sooho walked through the streets, trying to understand the scale of the problem. The truth was harsh. His family was in serious financial trouble, and he had no idea. But amidst the confusion, a new determination arose in his gaze. He couldn't stand still. Sooho came to a bitter but necessary conclusion. In that world, to solve complicated problems, there was only one answer. Money is power. With a plan in mind, he headed to the Awakened Bureau. If there was a way to get money fast, it would be by using his abilities. He remembered the last time he was there, when he was coldly dismissed and sent away for not being a real Awakened. This time, he presented his documents, including his newly acquired Rank F Awakened identity, the lowest rank that existed. The attendant's response, however, was a bucket of cold water. His request for the exam was denied on the spot because he didn't meet the requirements. Sooho was speechless. He was an Awakened, even if he was just a Rank F. Why wasn't that enough to get a chance? The attendant explained the reason for the refusal. He was classified as Rank F, but he still lacked 4 awakening points to be officially recognized. Basically, he wasn't enough. Sooho tried to argue, explaining that he had arrived there by crossing a portal 2 weeks ago, a feat that should prove his worth. The woman confirmed that normal people would die when crossing a portal, as their bodies would be torn apart. The information was correct, but her tone was one of pure disbelief. She dismissed him sarcastically, asking if he was the Hulk or something. The attendant told him to leave his delusions at home and stop wasting her time. The only option she offered was the standard one: go to a field and accumulate the missing points on his own. Only then should he come back. With no other choice, Sooho came across a reward board: goblins in the Suwon field, worth $500 each. To him who came from another world, this system was completely confusing. Goblins in the Suwon field. That was it. A chance to get the money and points he so desperately needed to help his family. Sooho then set off towards his destination, crossing the city. In the taxi, he was impressed by the giant walls that surrounded the city. The driver explained that the walls went all the way around Seoul. The taxi driver continued, surprised that Sooho didn't know. Seoul was divided into 12 areas, with hundreds of internal gates and dozens of external gates leading to the hunting fields. Sooho listened to everything in silence, realizing how little he knew about this new world and its rules. The car continued on its way. Upon arriving at his destination, Gate 27 of the Suwon field, Sooho thanked the driver and got out of the vehicle. He took his first step toward his goal. Before him, the imposing structure of Gate 27 rose up. It was here that his journey to becoming a true awakened would begin. Sooho reflected on what the attendant had said. So, this place was a kind of hunting ground, a designated area to get the points he needed so badly. He walked purposefully toward the entrance. As he approached the checkpoint, he was immediately stopped by two soldiers guarding the access. One of the guards approached him, demanding his mercenary identification so he could proceed. Sooho, not knowing exactly what that was, stared at the soldier. The soldier stood firm, waiting for the license that the young man obviously did not have. Sooho admitted that he didn't have the document. The soldier's response was short and blunt. He explained that normal civilians were strictly prohibited from entering the field. End of discussion. But suddenly, a deafening noise interrupted the discussion. Out of nowhere, a military jeep crashed through the barrier at top speed, completely out of control. Inside, the driver was being attacked by a hideous creature, and panic took over the vehicle. The car flew off the ramp with no chance of stopping and crashed violently into the retaining wall. Amid the chaos, one of the soldiers grabbed the radio, requesting emergency backup immediately. The situation had just gotten much worse. With the accident creating a breach in security, the soldiers quickly organized themselves, receiving orders to get into combat formation. They aimed at the destroyed vehicle, preparing for whatever was inside. Suddenly, a monstrous claw tore through the jeep's body with absurd force, and from inside the wreckage, the creature that caused the accident finally revealed itself, snarling at the soldiers. The team froze for a moment, staring at the horror that emerged right in front of them, but their training took over. Without hesitation, they opened fire on the abomination. A hail of bullets hit the creature head-on, tearing its skin and causing it to recoil. The monster roared in pain and fury, but the barrage of shots was relentless and gave no room for a counterattack. Until, with the creature visibly subdued, the sergeant signaled to cease fire. The threat finally fell, motionless. The situation seemed resolved, and one of the soldiers asked to call an ambulance. As the dust settled, one of the soldiers asked Sergeant Park about that civilian who had arrived by taxi earlier and caused confusion. The sergeant looked around, but couldn't find him anywhere. Another soldier laughed, concluding that the young man had probably fled in fright with all the commotion. Only they were completely wrong. Sooho hadn't run away. He took advantage of the perfect distraction to slip past the guards unnoticed, continuing on his way toward his true goal. He took his first step into that devastated world. From above, he got a real sense of what awaited him, an entire city, abandoned and destroyed, stretched as far as the eye could see. But that didn't intimidate him. It was exactly what he was looking for. A place where he could get stronger, away from everything and everyone. The sun set over the rubble, marking the end of one day and the beginning of his solitary journey. Night fell over the ghost town, bringing with it a heavy and oppressive silence, and for Sooho, that darkness was strangely familiar. He felt more comfortable there. That was his domain. Sooho advanced through the darkness without any hesitation, feeling more at home in that scene of destruction than anywhere else. Only Sooho's confidence was his downfall. Even in his own domain, a surprise attack caught him off guard, and the darkness he called home suddenly turned against him. The domain, now in ruins, violently expelled him. Sooho was thrown into free fall with nowhere to go or what to expect at the end. Betrayed by his own power, Sooho no longer had control of anything. The fall was violent, and the feeling of helplessness was the only thing left as he plummeted into the abyss. When the dust settled, Sooho found himself alone in the midst of the destruction. All of this was the result of his own power, a force that he was unable to contain and that now weighed on his shoulders. Still processing what had happened, Sooho touched the devastated ground. The force that ran through him moments ago was now a silent and cold reality under his fingers, proof of what he was capable of. And suddenly, the silence broke. A massive shockwave exploded, throwing Sooho violently backward. That power was much greater than he imagined. Without even looking back, Sooho shot down the street. The only thing that mattered now was surviving and putting as much distance as possible between him and that explosion. The impact of the explosion threw him far away. Sooho tried to stay conscious amidst the chaos, but the force was overwhelming, throwing his body uncontrollably through the air. By a hair, he managed to grab onto the edge of a building, digging his fingers into the stone to prevent a fall that would be fatal. Exhausted, Sooho finally got to safety. He felt that something was wrong, as if his power had disappeared, and wondered if this was a side effect of his return. Alone on top of the ruins, under the moonlight, Sooho contemplated the destroyed city. The silence was heavy, and so was the weight of his actions. Until a strange smell in the air caught his attention. It wasn't smoke or dust, it was the smell of blood and something else. Instinctively, he turned in the direction of that odor, feeling that the danger wasn't over yet. In the distance, he heard the sound of lamentations. Sooho decided that this was where he should start acting. Without hesitation, he set off towards the sound. Sooho moved nimbly through the ruins, jumping between the rubble as if this were his natural habitat. His expression was cold and calculating. This was no longer the frightened young man from before. Now, he was the hunter. And soon, he found the source of the noise, a group of horrendous creatures surrounding a white wolf who was already seriously injured but refused to fall. The monsters seemed to enjoy the suffering of their prey, savoring victory before the battle was even over. But the wolf showed no fear. Even cornered and bleeding, his gaze was one of pure defiance, ready to fight to the end. It was at this moment that a new presence arrived on the scene, landing silently behind the creatures. Emerging from the shadows, Sooho faced the monsters. For him, the situation was clear. These beings were no longer the hunters. Now, they were all his prey. The wolf, who was already preparing for the end, felt the change in the air. A new presence had arrived, and the battle took an unexpected turn. The creatures, however, were not intimidated. The arrival of a single human only stirred up the pack's fury, which advanced without hesitation. But Sooho showed no fear at all. On the contrary, a confident smile appeared on his face. He was exactly where he wanted to be. With a cold look, he reinforced his position. The hunt had changed sides, and now those monsters were his prey. Without wasting a second, Sooho launched into the attack. His first punch was devastating, hitting the creature head-on with absurd force. The impact was so brutal that it simply obliterated the monster, which didn't have the slightest chance to react to the overwhelming blow. Only, right after the victory, something strange happened. Countless system windows appeared around Sooho, all flashing the same message. System error. Sooho froze, not understanding what was happening. He already felt his power lacking, and now the system itself seemed to be broken. Could this be the real side effect of his return?